Welcome to this deep dive. We take your sources, we unpack the big ideas, and today we're looking at something really powerful. Excerpts from Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, this is definitely not just, any book. The sources you shared mention people like Carl Rogers calling it an outstanding contribution, Gordon Allport a gem. It's heavy stuff, born from unimaginable suffering, but with lessons for everyone.
Absolutely. And the sources give us this unique window, starting with Frankl's own experiences in the concentration camps, and then leading into his whole psychological approach, logotherapy.
Right.
So our mission here really is to grasp the core message from these materials that life can have meaning, potential meaning, under any conditions, even the absolute worst. And to understand what logotherapy is actually about.
It's a tough read in parts, but incredibly insightful. Frankl, based on these sources, splits the book basically in two. First, his experiences, then his therapy.
Right. Part one, experiences in a concentration camp. And the sources stress this isn't trying to be like a full history lesson.
No, not at all.
Personal. It's one person's story out of millions. And the goal, it says, is to answer. What did camp life do to the mind of the average prisoner? Psychologically, what happened?
And that focus, that internal focus is so key. Frankl lays out these 3 psychological phases the inmates went through. The first one, even before getting into the camp proper, it was shock.
Shock, yeah. The sources describe that horrific train journey, jammed in, the uncertainty, and then seeing that sign, Auschwitz.
Ugh.
Just the name itself, conjured images of, gas chambers, crematoriums, the sheer horror hitting them.
And then arrival. The selection. Frankl calls it the finger game in the text.
Yeah.
Just one SS officer's gesture, life or death, the first brutal decision about your existence, and the source's note for his transport. Maybe 90% sent straight to the crematorium. Around 1,500 people.
It's just unthinkable. That level of shock, loss, stripped of everything, possessions, identity gone. Frankl mentions people grabbing fake names, trying anything for the number tattoo.
And in that moment, there's no space for, ethics or morals. It's pure survival instinct taking over.
That initial shock, the sources say, sometimes shifted into this weird, cold curiosity, almost detachment.
Yeah, like a defense mechanism kicks in, a kind of forced objectivity when things are just too bizarre, too awful. Just observing, almost clinically, what horror comes next.
And that detachment, that sort of bleeds into the second phase, right? The main one. Apathy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Apathy. The sources describe it as the dominant symptom once you're entrenched in camp life. Just this profound blunting of emotions.
Like you just can't feel anymore about the brutality, the injustice all around you.
Right, everything narrows down. Your own survival, maybe a couple of close friends, that's it.
It's described as a necessary defense, right? To dim the unbearable reality. An emotional death, almost.
Yeah, and there was disgust, too. With the filth, the inhumanity, even tragically, with themselves, their degraded state, and the longing for home, for family that became incredibly painful against the numbness.
It seems impossible that anything beyond basic survival could exist there. But the sources point out something amazing. Even in deep apathy, this intense inner life could flicker. Thoughts of loved ones became, less physical, more spiritual.
Yes. Frankl talks about realizing that love goes very far beyond the physical person, finding meaning in their spiritual being, their essence, even if they weren't physically there or even alive.
That inner world became a refuge, didn't it? Imagination clinging to tiny past memories, and incredibly, moments of beauty still broke through.
Astonishingly, yes. A sunset seen through barbed wire, mountains in the distance. These flashes of connection with nature or beauty could offer real solace, proof the spirit wasn't totally crushed.
The sources even mention bits of art, humor, improvised shows in the huts, gallows humor.
Yeah, trying to find humor is called a trick, learned in mastering the art of living or surviving. It's a defense, sure, but it also speaks to resilience.
And Frankl makes this really interesting point about suffering, comparing it to gas in a chamber.
Ah, yes, that analogy. Suffering fills the whole soul, right? Doesn't matter if it looks big or small to an outsider.
To the person experiencing it, it's absolute. It fills everything.
That's such a powerful way to put it, and crucially, the sources emphasize, despite all the pressures, the apathy, people could still keep a shred of spiritual freedom, an independence of mind.
They could choose their attitude.
Exactly. The experience has proved you can't escape the conditions, but you can choose how you respond to them.
And that choice, that inner freedom, that feels like the core of it, doesn't it? The sources give examples of people being selfless, suppressing anger.
Even under the worst stress imaginable, that capacity to choose your response remained. It wasn't universal, but it was possible.
Which leads to the third phase mentioned, after liberation.
Right, release. And the reaction wasn't always simple joy. Often it was this weird depersonalization first, the outside world feeling unreal.
Like you're not really back yet.
Exactly. And then, going home, facing people who hadn't been through it. That could lead to real bitterness, disillusionment, feeling misunderstood.
Yeah, the sources talk about that difficult reintegration, some bitterness, some resentment. Understandable, really.
Totally. But the main takeaway from that whole camp experience section, the insight Frankl pulls out, is proof positive. Even when stripped of everything, you still have the last human freedom.
The freedom to choose your attitude, to choose your own way.
Precisely. And that lived, brutal experience is the bedrock for his whole approach, logotherapy, which is part 2.
Okay, so logotherapy, let's unpack that based on the sources. Frankl sets it against Freud and Adler, right?
Yeah, he saw Freud focused on the will to pleasure, Adler on the will to power. Logotherapy, it's all about the will to meaning.
Meaning as the primary driving force.
Exactly. Not just a drive, but the fundamental one. And this meaning isn't some generic thing. It's unique to you right now. Only you can find it and fulfill it. The sources even mention polls showing people prioritizing finding meaning.
So our deepest need isn't just comfort or status. It's significance. It's the why. And when that search is blocked, that's where the trouble starts.
That's the idea. And this leads to another concept, no dynamics.
Right, this is interesting. He argues against the idea that mental health is just about being, like, calm and tension-free.
Quite the opposite, actually. He says a certain amount of tension is necessary for mental health. The tension between who you are now and who you could or should become. Between reality and potential.
So it's not about achieving perfect balance or homeostasis.
No, it's the striving, the struggle towards a goal, towards meaning. That's what keeps us psychologically healthy, not just chilling out.
That feels really relevant today with so much focus on avoiding stress. Frankl's saying, no, lean into that healthy tension, the tension between the meaning out there and you, the one who needs to fulfill it.
Exactly. It's a productive tension. And the core of existence for logotherapy is responsibility.
Responsibility, how does that play out?
Well, the sources mention this kind of challenge Frankl would pose. Live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you are about to act now.
Wow, that's intense.
It is, but it's not about making you feel guilty. It's about making you hyper-aware of your choices, that life is finite, and you're responsible for shaping your life through your actions now.
So it shifts the focus. The therapist isn't giving answers.
Not at all. They're helping the patient see their own responsibility to find meaning. Logotherapy doesn't judge values. It leaves it to your conscience. Frankl used that analogy of the eye doctor.
Oh, right, helping you see clearly so you can navigate, not painting a picture for you.
Precisely. And the sources lay out how to find meaning. 3 main ways. First, creating a work or doing a deed.
Okay, so achievement, accomplishment, making something, doing something useful. That seems straightforward.
Yeah, pretty intuitive. The second way, experiencing something or encountering someone. Finding meaning through goodness, truth, beauty, or especially love.
Love is a path to meaning.
A huge one.
Yeah.
Love lets you see the potential in another person, helps them actualize it. The sources call it the ultimate human goal, the deepest way to grasp another person.
Okay, and the third path. This feels like the toughest one. Finding meaning in suffering.
Yes. When you face something unavoidable, illness, loss, the kind of horrors Frankl saw the meaning isn't in the suffering itself.
Right.
It's in the attitude you take towards it, how you bear it. Turning tragedy into a personal triumph, transforming it into an achievement of the human spirit.
So it's not finding meaning because of suffering, but finding meaning in the way you choose to face it. That distinction is crucial.
Absolutely critical. And logotherapy has practical tools too. One key technique in the sources is paradoxical intention.
Ah, yes. This is for things driven by that anticipatory anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Where fearing it makes it happen.
Exactly, that vicious cycle, like being afraid you won't sleep and the fear keeps you awake, or afraid you blush and you do.
I think everyone can relate to that on some level.
Definitely. So with paradoxical intention, the therapist encourages the patient, maybe even humorously, to try to do the thing they fear.
So if you're scared of not sleeping,
you're told, okay, try your absolute hardest to stay awake all night. If you fear blushing, try to blush as much as possible.
Huh. That sounds weirdly effective.
The sources say it is. By intentionally focusing on the feared thing, maybe with a bit of detachment or humor, you break the cycle. The fear loses its grip. And often the thing you feared, like falling asleep or not blushing, happens naturally because the underlying anxiety is gone.
It's like you step outside the fear, mock it almost, instead of fighting it. The sources say it works well for phobias, obsessions.
Anything driven by that feedback loop of fearful avoidance, it cuts the circuit. And this all ties back to Frankl rejecting pan-determinism.
The idea that we're just products of our environment or genes.
Exactly. He fiercely believed humans are ultimately self-determining. We can rise above our conditioning. Not that biology and environment don't matter, they absolutely do, but the human spirit can transcend them.
That capacity to choose, to grow beyond circumstances, it brings us right back to the camps.
Which leads perfectly into the final big idea from the sources. The case for a tragic optimism.
Tragic optimism. That phrase alone. Wow.
It tackles the huge question. How can you possibly say yes to life, find meaning, knowing about the tragic triad, suffering, guilt, and death? These unavoidable parts of being human.
How do you stay optimistic in the face of that?
It's about realizing potential isn't just for the good times, you can actualize it even then. By turning suffering into achievement, like we said, by using guilt as a chance to change for the better, and by seeing life's transitoriness, the fact that it ends.
Not as depressing, but as motivation.
Exactly, as an incentive for responsible action. Make this moment count because it won't last forever.
So the fact that things passed doesn't mean they're lost. Our past choices, experiences, they're saved in a way, and the limited time makes the present precious.
Precisely. Each moment has potential meaning waiting for you to find it. And Frankl argued, you can't chase happiness directly. That doesn't work.
Happiness is a side effect.
A consequence. It ensues from finding meaning. And the flip side, that feeling of meaninglessness, the existential vacuum he called it, that's a huge problem in modern life, leading to depression, addiction, aggression.
That really connects the dots, doesn't it? From Auschwitz to everyday struggles people face now. Lack of meaning is a root issue.
And he circles back, meaning isn't abstract, it's specific. To you, to now. The question isn't, what can I expect from life?
It's, what is life asking of me?
Yes, and you answer with your actions, your choices, how you live.
So we've really dived deep into Frankl's work here based on these sources. We've walked through the camps, the shock, the apathy, but also those glimmers of freedom, of meaning still being possible.
And we explored logotherapy, the will to meaning, that healthy tension of neodynamics, the three paths, work, love, and attitude towards suffering.
Plus, practical techniques like paradoxical intention, breaking those anxiety cycles.
And landed on this idea of tragic optimism, saying yes to life, embracing responsibility even with suffering, guilt, and death as part of the deal, seeing transitoriness as a call to make moments matter.
The overwhelming message from these sources is Frankl's belief, forged in fire, that we are self-determining. We can choose our response. So what does this mean for you listening right now?
Well, Frankl suggests meaning is personal, moment to moment. Life is asking you questions you have to answer.
And here's that final, really potent thought Frankl leaves us with in the sources. He concludes the book saying, "Since Auschwitz, we know what man is capable of. And since Hiroshima, we know what is at stake."
Wow. Auschwitz and Hiroshima, the depths of human cruelty and the peak of human destructive power.
Yeah. What does putting those two together suggest about our potential for good and evil, and maybe our responsibility now, knowing what we're capable of and knowing the stakes?
That is definitely something to mull over.